Welcome in the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner, and on this podcast, we talk about Kentucky basketball from a fan's perspective. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Kentucky versus St. John's. We're previewing that and just what that game's going to mean and how it's going to look for both these teams going in to the end of the year, being this St. John's one of their last 3 games of the year, and Kentucky being one of 2 last games of the year, where St. John's after this plays Hartford and Georgetown, and Kentucky just has Bellarmine left until the new year comes around. So for Kentucky, it's a really important game in a stretch of a 4-game span that Kentucky really needs some big wins of Indiana, St. John's, Bellarmine, and Alabama, where you have Bellarmine, the non-Power 4 team, kind of squeezed in there, or non-ranked team or has been ranked team squeezed in there for Kentucky. And St. John's, St. John's does not have a quad 1 win yet, with St. John's losing to the likes of Alabama, Iowa State, and Auburn in the Players Era tournament, with their best win being against Baylor, who Baylor's had kind of was just coming off a rough loss to Memphis, who Memphis has not been very good this year. And overall, they haven't had the best performance this season, not playing a very hard schedule, getting one good win against Creighton. But other than that, their schedule has not been very tough, and they've just not looked super great to help boost the Johnnies' strength of schedule. So this is a big game for both these teams, as it will help boost their NCAA tournament resume for their non-con. Really last big chance for both teams. And there's going to be a lot of familiar faces, I feel like, on this St. John's team. It's Coach Pope versus Coach Pitino. And we have another familiar face in Bryce Hopkins, former Kentucky Wildcat, a guy that saw a little bit of playing time under John Calipari in his freshman year before transferring to Providence, where Kentucky actually saw him in the round of 64, where Kentucky ended up beating Providence. And then Bryce Hopkins had a rough little stretch after that, where he had several season-ending injuries, but has now bounced back to where he's been playing well for the Johnnies, where he's played 14 games, 3 games in his last 2 seasons before the Johnnies. He's been averaging about 23 minutes a game, averaging 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, a little less than 2.5 assists a game, being this Johnny's leading scorer. Ejiofor, another guy that you would recognize from last year's team, he's averaging almost 14 points a game, 7 rebounds, almost 3 assists. And it just has this Johnny's mentality, especially from this last year's team: physicality, defense, rebounder. It's just really shows off that identity of this St. John's program that Coach Pitino has been trying to instill in this team. And this is a definite Rick Pitino fingerprints all over it, with 9, 10 players for the Johnnies averaging at least 10 minutes a game. And the real key for this Johnnies team is another familiar face for any Kentucky fan that stays up to date with recruiting: Isaiah Jackson, the 6'5" combo guard from Brooklyn, New York. He's averaging like 11 points, almost 3 rebounds, and a little over assists a game. Last year, he was played at UNC, was a guy that was up for Kentucky commit. Kentucky was in like his top 3. When John Calipari was here, he just got inserted back into the starting lineup last game against DePaul and had a very good game, scoring 10 points in 14 minutes with 3 rebounds, 2 assists. And this team's a very balanced effort overall from this Johnny's team. And this is the Johnny's team that's averaging almost 88 points per game with a really balanced effort. Like I said, no one averaging over 15, and having 5, almost 6 players averaging 10 points. And one thing that this Johnny's team really struggled with last year was 3-point shooting. That's something they've taken quite a bit of a leap in, with Zay Jackson averaging almost 43% from three, has attempted almost 43s this year, making 16 of them. Ozar Sellers, another guy that's been knocking down threes at a high rate. The Stanford transfer has been shooting almost 44%. Two guys that really can knock down threes on this team. Both those guys are almost 24-minute per game guys. So it's a really balanced effort from the Johnnies offensively and defensively. As a coach Rick Pitino team, they're going to bring the physicality. They're going to bring all those tools. And it's just going to be an absolute rock fight. But Alabama was able to really attack their identity a little bit with being able to drop 103 on this team with their deadly guard play from Alabama, with Feinline having 25 and Holloway having 21. So this St. John's defense is very susceptible to some elite guard play and elite offense, and that's a hope of Otega Owe and Jalen Lowe are two guys I'm looking at to see if they can perform at a high level. And the lack of a true point guard was another big standout, trying to get Ian Jackson or trying to get someone to be able to fill that spot. But this St. John's team has kind of been up and down all year, with different games being more competitive with teams that are better. They only lost to number 4 Iowa State by 1, but it was a really close game. They ended up pulling out against Ole Miss, who's had their struggles this year in the non-con, losing to Iowa, losing to Utah, only beating Memphis by 6. This Ole Miss team right now is 7-4, but the Johnnies are their lone ranked opponent played in the non-con. Another SEC team will need to cheer for. They play NC State on Sunday at 1 o'clock on ESPN, so that'll be interesting to see Will Wade go up against SEC foe. But overall, the Johnnies, they rebound the ball well. They're always physical. They're going to make it a 94-feet game with their full court pressure. And Kentucky statistically is the better rebounding team, but overall, they're very physical. Kentucky's averaging 41 rebounds. St. John's averaging 39. The assists are going to be really important for Kentucky in this game. We're averaging 18 assists, but in our struggle games, we've really struggled with our assist, overall just playmaking ability. So that's going to be very important for the Wildcats. Also for Kentucky, it's going to be very important that we have good interior play from our bigs. Malachi Moreno, I would like to see Yelovich get some time in this game with some of his versatility, with some of their more athletic bigs. Hopkins can be very much a versatile player, being kind of that Swiss Army knife 3-4, more of a true 4. When he came into Kentucky, they looked at him more as a 3, but became more of a well-rounded 4. Kentucky, we need to keep St. John's in front of us, try to attack some of our mismatches on the interior with their lack of true rim protection. Yellow 4 is not the biggest in the world at 6'9", not going to be a guy that's going to give you a lot of shot blocking. He averages around 1 block a game, so can block shots, but as long as Kentucky uses our body and try to initiate contact and get downhill for some catch and shoot looks, I think we can definitely get this St. John's team out of position and be able to break their pressure and be able to make them pay for trying to pressure up. But also for Kentucky, I talked about Jaden Quaintance and his health. Jaden Quaintance is trending towards playing on Saturday. It's not a guarantee right now. We'll probably know by tomorrow night, Friday night, a true update for the 6'10", 6'11" big man, what we'll really know from him and what his situation looks like as a guy that's one of the more gifted player, is probably the most gifted player on this Kentucky roster. And he's just athletic freak, 7'5" wingspan, 6'10", 6'11", and right now he's practiced the last 3 days. He's practiced full court on Tuesday, and then I think he did it on Wednesday, where his full go days. He's looked really good in practice. They've said conditioning is going to be really big for him. My kind of opinion on it is I think it would be important for him to still be able to play in this St. John's game, just because getting him real game action is the best conditioning. Get him play 10, 12 minutes, maybe less, just whatever he's comfortable with, just trying to get him moving. There's no conditioning like basketball and being an actual game. We'll know more as he finishes up the week of practice, but we'll really see as he continues to warm up. It'd be the St. John's game, but really the late is that Bellarmine game coming up on Tuesday. But we'll really have to see. He's a guy that I think could give Kentucky a couple game-changing blocks, some athleticism, some rim running. I think he's the best fit out of our bigs in that Amari Williams role. Like I've said before, he averaged almost 3 blocks a game at Arizona State last year. Dominant physically, is overall just one of the most physically talented players in the country. And Kentucky and St. John's, it's the Rick Pitino, Coach Pope matchup I talked about. It's the master versus the apprentice. And I think for Kentucky, this is Mark Pope's second big kind of matchup with another coach. Last year was Arkansas. I think he'll come in more prepared, more locked in. I like the matchups for Kentucky in this game to be able to have Denzel Aberdeen and some of these different guys make these guards feel uncomfortable, with St. John's not having a true point guard. And Bryce Hopkins can be, but I don't think they use him enough as a true hub offensively to take some of that pressure off of. And I think Kentucky can take advantage and be equal in some of the rebounding, some of the physicality things, if Kentucky can really lock in and be able to knock down some shots and take advantage of transition opportunities. And that's all from the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. And to stay up to date, go follow me at Quest Number 9 on Instagram and Twitter to stay up to date to all new episodes. I will see you next time.